Ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speaker is naval veteran and Ellis Island Medal of Honor recipient, Mr. Tom Dreesen. A son of Illinois, he is a native of Harvey. At a young age, Mr. Dreesen left for Hollywood to launch a successful career as a comedian, marked most especially by his 500 performances on shows like The Late Show with David Letterman and The Tonight Show, not to mention hundreds of performances he has selflessly given for charity events and to the American troops defending freedom around the globe. Please join me in welcoming and recognizing our own native son, Mr. Tom Dreesen.
Thank you, Carla. Thank you very much. You are about as happy as you make up your mind to be. This quote from Abraham Lincoln profoundly changed my life. I thought, you mean I can change my own state of mind? I'd always thought that circumstances dictated how one was supposed to think and to feel. To think that you could choose to be happy or sad, that you had the power over that choice, led me to start reading books like The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale, A Guide to Confident Living, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy, Positive Mental Attitude by W. Clement Stone, and literally hundreds of books on the powers of the mind, all written years after Abraham Lincoln said, you are about as happy as you make up your mind to be. This from a man who suffered great losses as a boy and a young adult. The death of his mother, the death of his sister, the death of his first love, 2 sons who preceded him in death, and so many friends who died in the Civil War. All of this aggravated his natural tendency toward depression, and he suffered melancholy all of his life. In the days before there was a medication for depression, he sought out self-medication, and his medication was humor. To somehow, in the darkest of times, to try and find something to laugh about, and almost always he would make himself the butt of the joke. Of all of his great attributes, this might have been his greatest, a sense of humor. A sense of humor is not when you have the ability to laugh at other shortcomings and misfortunes, it's when you have the ability to laugh at your own. Time and time again, he would open up his speeches with a joke on him. He never thought of himself as a good-looking man, and for good reason. And he would poke fun at himself and his looks. In a speech in 1861, he opened with, I stepped upon this platform that I may see you and that you may see me. In the arrangement, I have the best of the bargain. In another speech in 1856 in Decatur, Illinois, addressing a group of editors, he said, I feel like the ugly man riding through the woods who met a woman also on horseback who stopped and said, well, for land's sake, you are the homeliest man I ever saw. Yes, ma'am, but I can't help it, he replied. No, I suppose not, she observed, but you might stay at home. Again, poking fun at himself, but also endearing himself to the crowd. Lincoln was a master of the storytelling art, and when told by a master, even a dull joke might be irresistible. And when it was, no one's laugh was more heartier than his. Aside from his masterful storytelling skills, he was also a great mimic who could do a Dutchman or an Irishman with the brogue, or mimic any local that he may have encountered. In the campaign of 1840, debating a political antagonist, Jesse B. Thomas, at the courthouse right here in Springfield, Illinois, Thomas made some sarcastic remarks that stung Lincoln. And for the first time on the stump or in public, when it was his turn to speak, he resorted to mimicry for effect. In this, he was without a rival. He imitated Thomas in gesture and in voice, at times doing a caricature of Thomas's walk and the very motions of his body. Thomas, like everyone else, had peculiarities of expression and gesture, and these Lincoln succeeded in rendering more prominent than ever. The crowd yelled and cheered as he continued. Thomas wasn't happy about this, but encouraged by the demonstration and ludicrous features of the speakers, the performance gave way to intense and scathing ridicule. Thomas actually gave way to tears. The next day it was the talk of the town, and for years afterward it was called the skinning of Thomas. Lincoln later said the recollection of that evening filled him with the deepest chagrin. He felt like he had gone too far. He hunted up Thomas and made an ample apology, showing the humanity of this great man. Never did he go to such great lengths in public address ever again. He fully realized the difference between laughing at yourself or making others the butt of your jokes. He continued to use joke-telling skills at every opportunity and recognized when the opportunity arose. He told many funny stories, so many funny stories that Paul Zell, who wrote a book called Abe Lincoln's Legacy of Laughter, tells a story about two ladies discussing the probable outcome of the Civil War. One said, "I think that Jefferson Davis will succeed." "Why do you think so?" the second woman said. "Because Jefferson Davis is a praying man." And she responded, "So is Abraham," said the second woman. "Yes," said the first woman, "but the Lord will think that Abraham is joking." As President of the United States, people were always coming up to Lincoln asking him for this or for that. He was never able to accommodate or please them all. Then in the midst of his first term as president, Lincoln contracted a case of smallpox. The newspapers reported that Lincoln said, "Finally, I've got something I can give to everybody." He went on to become the greatest storyteller of his time and laugh speakers of his time, and arguably the best storytelling president of all time. Almost always opening and closing a meeting with a funny story by the masterful storyteller himself. The lessons we learn from Abraham Lincoln is that none of us are without imperfections, and let us be the first to laugh at them. I will close this with a funny story that I think Abraham Lincoln would appreciate and even use later on, because he closed all of his meetings with a funny story, and I'll close this with a funny story. Many years ago, after I had done about 15 Tonight shows, I got booked in Des Moines, Iowa, and never had worked Des Moines, Iowa before. I was very excited about that, but when I got to Des Moines, Iowa, it was a 360-seat theater that was sold out, and I was excited. But when I got to Des Moines, Iowa, they had the worst snowstorm in the history of Iowa, an actual blizzard. Normally it would take 10 minutes to get to the theater. It took an hour and 20 minutes. When I finally got to the theater, there was only one man in the crowd, an old man, a farmer. So I said to him, "I see no need to do the show." And the old man said, "I don't know anything about show business, son. I'm a farmer. The only thing I know is, if I'd have loaded up a wagon full of hay and I'd have drove 400 miles to feed a herd of cattle and only one cow showed up, I would have fed that cow." I said, "Well, you know, the old man's right." So I did my show, and I kind of got carried away with the sound of my own voice, and I did about 3.5 hours. When I got done, I said to the old man, "What'd you think?" He said, "Son, I told you I don't know anything about show business. I'm a farmer. Only thing I know is if I'd have loaded up a wagon load full of hay and I'd have drove 400 miles to feed a herd of cattle and only one cow showed up, I wouldn't have fed them the whole damn load." Thank you very much.